How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is RuffledRowlit, and sorry for the intros recently not being very explosive and crazy and whatnot, but I'm just trying to stay calm. Currently my voice is a little bit weird, so I apologize if I sound a bit odd, but joining me for today's video is going to be none other than Mudkip Memo. Say hi to the people, my friend.
Hello guys, I hope you all are having an amazing day.
Alrighty, so Memo is joining me today because today's subject video is going to be quite interesting. I'm going to be reading a lot, so please, if you're going to be listening to this video, it's going to be pretty long, I'm going to be honest. It might even end up being almost like a podcast, so please, sit back, relax, grab yourself a beverage, just, chill while you watch this, because it's going to be pretty chunky, and there's going to be, a lot of information to go through, so please be aware of that as we get into the information here, because there's a lot, okay, and I'm going to be discussing it from my opinion, what I think people's reactions are, do I agree with them, do I, etc. It's going to be a lot of discussing here. Some people may get a little bit, weird feelings, but please just listen and, just hear out my points and hear out Memo's points and whatnot, and we'll see what we feel about this, because, I feel like, this is kind of one of those situations where even me and Memo could have different points and, different feelings and all this, but let's get into it, though, which is the subject matter of the missing Pokemon in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, here is the big problem, guys, which is, besides the fact that they're not going to be, all these, brand new Pokemon and stuff in Sword and Shield, sorry, not brand new Pokemon, the old Pokemon, if we just remove that from the equation, that it's going to be a thing in Sword and Shield, the bigger issue is what's being said right here in this post on 4chan from somebody else, some Japanese user who was translating the Japanese kind of transcript of an interview we had here, and I'm going to read through what it basically says here. So lots of people are talking about what's happening in Sword and Shield, and not really focusing on the entire thing that Masuda said. He's not just saying that they're cutting out certain Pokemon from Sword and Shield, he's saying this is an entire policy shift for Game Freak. Because of this, and this here he's quoting, I guess, the stuff, because of this, from this game forward, our policy will change. The Pokemon that will appear will be specifically selected to fit that stage of adventure. TLDR, don't ever expect to ever see every Pokemon in one game ever again. Even if they release a Gen 4 remake, it'll still have different Pokemon available compared to Sword and Shield, and the pool won't be compatible. Alright, so, let me be honest. When I saw this, it confirmed the worry I had back in Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. See, I used to say, and I know, it might seem a little bit weird here, and I'm not sure what you think about this Memo, but let me just, get my point across, and then you can tell me your opinion on it, you guys in the comments, and also, Memo, you can let me know what you think about this. But I remember when Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee was announced, right? When that game was announced, I was hypercritical of it, and I still am hypercritical of Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. And what was the reason for that? The lack of Pokemon. The lack of Pokemon was the biggest issue with Sword and Shield. The fact that there weren't enough Pokemon in there was the biggest issue with Sword and Shield. Oh, sorry, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. The lack of, the fact that we only had Gen 1 Pokemon and, the Alolan versions of Kanto Pokemon, that was not good. I wasn't happy with that. I remember saying, this is boring. 151 Pokemon isn't fun, and, the other extra, 20 or so that you can get basically by trading, or, buying, by getting, Mew by buying it, it isn't fun, and I remember saying specifically several times, I hope this doesn't create a thing where from now on, Game Freak will start giving us less Pokemon. And I used to say, imagine if, in the future, we have to pay DLC to get all the Pokemon that already exist in previous games, but now we have to pay to get them. I was worried about something like that, and there's a possibility for that right now, but I don't think they're going to make DLC. On the other hand, what I think is going to happen is, we're just going to not get as many Pokemon anymore. We're just not going to get that anymore. And there were people, there were YouTubers, there were people who were happy, oh, this is great, I love the Let's Go games. The more Pokemon games we get, the better, right? I want them to do this, because then we can get a new Pokemon game every year. That's not good. Okay, sure, for me as a YouTuber, for me, literally me, myself, me, RuffledRowlit, that would be great, okay? More Pokemon content just means more videos to make, more content to produce, more games to, check out, play, and, make content on. Of course, that benefits me as a content creator, but me as a fan of Pokemon, it doesn't benefit me there, because this is exactly what I was warning about. This is the thing that I mentioned several times ahead of time. I said, guys, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee could be an indication of what's to come. Less Pokemon, more streamlined experiences, etc. That sort of stuff. Now, I was right in one way, but not in the other way, right? I was worried, for example, that we were going to get this kind of streamlined, boring experience, which doesn't seem to be what, we're getting in Sword and Shield. We're at least getting, an open world, etc. All these, things that we really wanted, right? vast world, crazy stuff, like, good looking Pokemon, great starter Pokemon, etc. We're getting that side of things, right? So we still don't even know about post game, right? We don't even know if there's going to be a post game in these games. Honestly, who knows? Is it going to be something like similar to the Battle Frontier or the Battle Tree or something like that? I don't think so at this point. But what I warned for, one of the other things I warned for, though, which I am correct about, was the lack of Pokemon. I said I do not want to see Pokemon as DLC. I do not want to see Pokemon that I could in the past have, that I could catch in the past games, which so far, for every Pokemon game we've had, you've been able to have all the Pokemon in each individual game. Sun and Moon, sure, there's only the Alolan Pokedex, and people make this argument all the time, like, oh, why, like, not all the time, but right now people make this argument, oh, but what are you talking about? The Alolan Pokedex only had a certain amount of Pokemon. It didn't have all the Pokemon. That's true. But the game files had all the Pokemon. So if you had Pokebank, you could send over those other Pokemon that didn't exist in like the Alolan region that you could catch them. You could still send them over. Difference now is we can't do that. Okay? And now all this reminds me of is the people who are like, super happy about Let's Go, hyping it up. Not like, and I'm not looking at Let's Go as like, individually as a game, but I'm looking at like the things that it like sprouts, right? The things that it sprouted. The concept of like only having a set amount of Pokemon from one set amount of like set place, right? And not allowing for other Pokemon to interject themselves in there and get in there, right? That's what I'm talking about. Like besides Let's Go, like, the experience itself, if we remove that from the equation, just look at Pokemon, the Pokedex. Let's Go was the first beginning of that, and I remember talking about this ages ago and saying, this is a problem. I literally, this was a problem then, last year, and now this is going to become a problem throughout. This is going to be a thing throughout, and of course, this post right here, of course, could be like, oh, this is fake, this isn't true. That's true. There's a possibility of that. But if you read what Masuda says here, he says that now that they've moved here and over to the Switch, they're going for this brand new kind of approach. They want to, not make all the Pokemon because that takes too much development time, making new animations, making new, etc., etc., etc. It takes apparently a lot of time. And, all that stuff. So, I don't know, but I want to know your opinion though, Memo. What are your thoughts? Like, if you look at like what I mentioned a second ago, like what Let's Go's existence and the warnings that kind of came. What are your thoughts about that?
First things first, with Pokemon Let's Go, even if the gameplay and etc., I don't like it at all. How you catch Pokemon and etc. But if it were like 100+ Pokemon in the game, I would buy it anyway. I would play it anyway. I would still play it to this day.
What do you mean by like 100 Pokemon? Because there is 151 Pokemon.
151. Yeah, 151. Sorry,
Okay.
but that is not the case at this point. The thing is with Pokemon Sword and Shield, if we're getting 400, 500, 300, we don't know yet. But yeah, sure, I get a little bit of worried, like, am I going to get my favorite fan favorites? Are Suicune going to be there? Are Entei going to be there? Is Ho going to be there? Etc. etc. Sure, I worry about that, but really, in my opinion, actually, the good outweigh the bad. Of course, I understand that Game Freak is a company in the end, and they can't have, like, let's say in Gen 10, if we got over 1,000 new Pokemon, and the technology just keeps getting better and better and better, they still have to make every single model, every single, like, just you name it. It's going to take so much time. The game is going to take so much longer, and it's going to cost much more money. And
that's true.
I don't think that Game Freak has that really. And one more thing about the whole that we're not going to see every Pokemon in a zone, like for Galar, for example, we're not going to see 800+ new Pokemon. If you think about it,
all Pokemon, because we say new Pokemon, people might misunderstand. What he's talking about is all the Pokemon across the board. There are 800 total Pokemon. We don't know how many brand new Pokemon, aka Galar brand new Pokemon.
That's why I said 800+. That's why I said 800+.
Okay, yeah, but go on, sorry.
No problem. And also one thing I recently, I did a theory video just like 2 hours ago where I was talking about this, and what I came across was that this could be like an alternative timeline, if to make sense in the game, not as a company or franchise or whatsoever. How this could make sense in the game is that, for example, there could be an alternative timeline where the and etc. And also, if you want to make a difference between the real world and the Pokemon world, for example, you don't see pandas in Mexico. You don't see. You don't
Okay,
see
but
belts
that's really like outside the scope of like the
I know.
thing, because like in the real world, if sure there are no tigers in Sweden, but if you go to, you know, whatever country and import them into this country, I mean import like their tools, but no, but like if you get them here, they can still be here. The situation we're looking at more is like they won't be at all able to go to that region or be available there at all. That's the problem. And my question was more not about like the, you know, that, but more like about the situation we're in for the future is what I'm kind of wondering more about. Like, this sets a standard from now on. That's the problem. It sets a standard for the future, like, you know, video games. So every iteration of Pokemon from now on is not going to have every single Pokemon. Which, here's the thing, right? There are two sides to this coin, right? Side number one, people saying Game Freak has money, they should be able to do it. That is true. Yes, Game Freak or the Pokemon, you know, franchise. Either way, this sets a standard for the future of, like, Pokemon games. From now on, every single iteration of Pokemon is going to be like this, right? We're not going to have all the Pokemon available ever again. And in the future, maybe, like, let's say 5-10 years from now, right? They might make another game being like, oh, this game's going to feature all the Pokemon, right? And that's going to be a big deal then. Except in the past, and this is the thing, right? This is the thing with games across the board nowadays, is that we're getting less and less and less and less and less. And Pokemon has finally got to that point as well. We're just getting less and less and less, right? Well, on top of that also, not the fact that we're not getting all the 800 Pokemon, but we're not getting Megas either, and Z-moves. Now, Z-moves, you and me, we don't give a shit about them. I don't care for them. But Megas, we do care for. Both you and me, we care for Megas. Megas, I like. Megas, I wanted more of. A lot of people wanted more Megas. I know some of y'all don't care for them. I know people, like, you know, in competitive do like them sometimes, hate them sometimes, because sometimes they can ruin the meta, they can help the meta. My point is, at least Megas were something that was kind of generally appreciated, and people like were okay with it being there, right, and liked it there. Now it doesn't exist anymore. Now it's not there anymore, and is it ever going to return? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to think about what will come anymore. It honestly feels like Pokemon is in this kind of like, in this crossroad right now. So either way, one side of the coin is that they have money, right, which is true, but here's the thing though, right, Game Freak doesn't get as much, like, you know, just like $1 billion to make a Pokemon game. No, they get, like, you know, their salaries given to the employees and then make the game, right? They are not the ones who hire in people. And the Pokemon Company isn't just the studios that make the video games. Sure, those are the people who make brand new Pokemon, make a lot of big decision. The new games also impact the anime, the cards, all that shit. But do remember, there are still the people who make the cards. Those need to be paid for. There are the licensing things that need to be done, all these things. There are a million different things within Pokemon. And of course, they're a company. They're trying to make a profit, okay? They're not trying to go on loss, they're trying to make a profit. So this makes sense in that sense. But does that mean that this is okay? No, of course not. But also, I think it's a situation like this, right? Fans are fucking weird, okay? I'm gonna get real rude right now, and I don't give a shit what people say. Fans are fucking annoying. Why? Because fans can't decide on what they want, okay? And this is just me being honest. 1 second, fans will be like, give us the game! Give us the game! We don't want to wait anymore! Give us the game, right? Like, one side they'll be like, that. Then when they're like, okay, well, we have to make some sacrifices to give you the game. Okay, here you go. Here's the game earlier, but we have to make some sacrifices, okay? Fans will be like, no! We want the game now! With everything! You know? It's like, wait a minute. You can't... You can't have the cake and eat it, dude. You know what I mean? You need to pick and choose your battles. You need to pick and choose what you're going for, because if you try to get everything at once, that's a problem. And that's the thing, right? That's what one of the issues we had back in 2015 when people were complaining. Where's Pokemon? Where's Pokemon? Where's Pokemon? See, I was kind of like in a weird state at that time. I was like, you know, kind of just not around much Pokemon. I was kind of off doing, like, playing other games and just focusing on other things. So I wasn't really in the loop of, like, how people were feeling. But I know the community across the board, though, was in a pretty downward spiral because there was a whole year without a brand new Pokemon entry, you know what I mean? And the year prior was Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. So people were really just, like, you know, hungry for something. And that's the thing, though. They gave you Sun and Moon, which they literally said themselves had to be kind of rushed. You know what I mean? And it seems like the same thing is happening with Sword and Shield right now. They essentially have to make sacrifices and kind of rush it because people want the games instantly. They want them instantly. They want every single year a brand new Pokemon game. I mean, look at right now, right? See, 3 months were in between the Sword and Shield announcement and new information, right? In between that time, we had a bunch of rumors, leaks, all that stuff that was happening, right? But so many people were frustrated, angry, because they didn't get information every single day, right? And I'll tell you right now, if we don't get any news for a while now, like let's say a month or two, people will be instantly angry. Now, sure, I was a little bit, as a content creator, right? For me, a drought is far much worse than for a fan, because fans have other things going on in their day-to-day life. Whereas me, and also Memo here, as content creators, we have to keep track of this shit every single day. And when it's empty, for us, it's like, well, shit, we're like, what are we going to do now? Like, there's nothing to talk about. We got nothing to do. There's nothing to report. You know what I mean? For us, it's like way worse. But I was still just kind of in this mood of like, whatever, dude. It's like, fine. It'll come when it comes. You know what I mean? And then it did come, and we got tons of info now, right? So, like, I was kind of in that mood. I was like, you know, whatever, sure, I'd love if there was information, but then there are other people who are super angry about it, you know, super angry. So it's pretty much a situation right now, guys, where basically people want shit instantly, okay? People want things straight away, and that's just kind of the society we live in today. This is not even just like a Pokemon thing. It's just kind of like a human thing nowadays, where people want to consume shit very quickly and move on to the next thing, right? They just want to quick, next thing, you know,
can't do
quick,
that
next
with
thing,
Pokemon. You
quick,
can't
next
do
thing.
You can't do that with Pokemon.
Exactly. And this thing, right, you know, I'm happy with the progress they've kind of, the leap they've made now. Open areas, you know, rotatable camera, and hopefully the next Pokemon generation will have rotatable camera for the whole world, you know what I mean? And they won't have to cut corners anywhere, because right now, they're still cutting corners in this game. They're still cutting corners with, of course, the lack of Megas, the lack of Emus, the lack of, you know, total Pokedex, but also the cutting corners in the cities by having you in a fixed camera. And the reason for the fixed camera is to hide unfinished areas, you know what I mean? There's something I talked about before, but Game Freak does this all the time, where they basically put your camera, the only reason they put your camera in a fixed position is so that you can see what's around this corner, you know what I mean? You might be like, you know, if you rotate a camera, you know, if you had the ability to rotate a camera and you were rotated there, what you would see is an emptiness. You would see a void, or like a, you know, just like a black bar or whatever. Why? Because they hadn't made that. That's the thing with Game Freak, is that the reason they make these fixed cameras is to basically cut corners when they're making certain textures or buildings and stuff, so they don't have to make the full thing, but they can basically like just kind of like, you know, skedaddle it around, you know what I mean? Whereas if you look like other, you know, other franchises, other games, you know what I mean, open world games and stuff like that, you know, the reason you have a freedom to do whatever you want is because they don't cut the corners. Pokemon does cut the corners, which is honestly pisses me off, because they've done that for so long, and it really frustrates me, okay? They did it for Let's Go, and I complained about it there, and I'm going to complain about it here as well, you know, that they haven't made the 3D camera fully rotatable, but honestly, the things that I have been given, I'm happy with. Honestly, the fact that they've actually made some progress makes me happy, but it worries me, because this essentially confirms a pretty grim situation, I'm going to be honest. Now,
like,
yeah, go ahead.
Can I point something out?
Go ahead.
The thing about the game being rushed and etc. First off, we have to understand one thing. This game the main series Pokemon games is just not the main series Pokemon games. As you mentioned before, there's the TCG, there's the anime, there's so much stuff. They don't have a schedule for themselves. They are given a schedule from the Game Freak company. And sure, yeah, you're right. Some things might feel rushed. They are probably rushed. But with this game, other than the camera, the graphics, as you said, you might not see some corners, you might not see some areas because of... Personally, when I look at Pokemon Sword and Shield, I feel like the things that used to be rushed are not as rushed as they are now. For example, one of the biggest things that is rushed is the amount of Pokemon. That's obvious, and the fixed camera in some places. But other things like that you're able to see other people online live, I don't feel that's rushed at all.
Well, yeah, they didn't even give us too much of an insight on that. We still need to, I think, wait and see exactly how that works, you know?
I know. But what I saw from, and this is my observations, by the way. If you want to bash someone, bash me, don't bash Ruff. But what I saw from the Nintendo Treehouse, it was actually Masuda actually moving his character, and it did fit with the actual gameplay that we saw. So that is one thing that is not rushed. Just the movements, the designs, the seeing Pokemon in the overworld. Like, sure, the game is kind of rushed as it usually is, but it's not as much rushed, if you know what I mean. But yeah, continue on with the point that you were supposed to make.
So I'm going to, of course, read the article as well, because I've totally forgotten about that. But just want to bring a final point in here before we get into the articles. This video is going to end up being 30 minutes anyways. But here's the thing about, like, what he just mentioned. There are a lot of good things in these games, okay? There seemingly seems to be a lot of good things. And honestly, if they can make up in all the other areas, right? Making sure the online is good, making sure, like, you know, the journey, the story, the new Pokemon that we do get are good. Gigantamaxing, which is the other form of Dynamaxing, that is real, because the leak said so, and the leak was real so far with everything else. You know, if all that other stuff, right, is like, you know, if it makes up, you know, for the lack of old Pokemon, then I'm kind of fine with it. But I'm worried about the future, right? I'm worried about the future because now that we have rotatable camera in the open world and we have these open world areas, you know, this is a common thing with Game Freak, but they'll remove these things in the future. They'll remove features. Like, for example, we had following Pokemon, right, in Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, and people were instantly complaining, why don't we have following Pokemon in Sword and Shield? Well, I've explained about the limitations of the Switch that probably couldn't be able to handle most of that, but also, the other point is laziness. They are lazy. They won't add that because it takes too much time for them to develop that into the game. To just simply add that ability for, you know, a Pokemon to follow you would just take them too much time, and they don't want to bother with it, and it's extra development time and extra, you know, it just adds more things to their to-do list, and they don't want to bother with that. So I'm just thinking that this, I mean, these features and these things, right, open world, all these things, they're great, but will they remain? Or will we simply, from now on, get Pokemon games that, you know, what else can they really innovate, right? Because we're just getting another gimmick that's just like, oh, you know, now we get Dynamaxing and Gigamaxing. Next generation, we might get Minimamaxing, you know what I mean? Oh, Pokemon may go invisible. They become Ant-Man, right? Then they can enter Thanos as Boom Boom. You know what I mean? Like, my point is that, like, with Game Freak, you're never certain. And that's what worries me the most about this. Either way, let's get into the actual article because I've been waiting for too much for that. So either way, let's read this. If you guys want to read this on your own, there's a link down below. Check it out. So the Pokemon Sword and Shield interview. We knew at some point we weren't going to be able to keep infinitely supporting all of the Pokemon. We talked to the Game Freak about the battle potential of Dynamaxing and the decision to narrow the number of available Pokemon to the move into the new era. So already from here, I don't even think we need to, like, I think we can already stop here. I know we just read the title, but see, this is the thing, right? The new era. The new era is we don't feature every single Pokemon in the games, but also, and this is where I'm stuck right now, guys. I'm on the fence on this because I understand why they won't be able to do this from now on and why they're trying to do this now to introduce this thing of like, sorry guys, but from now on we're gonna have to limit the amount of Pokemon. We have to be selective with it. You know what I mean? I get it. Why? Because, guys, after this generation, we will have almost 900 Pokemon in total. By generation 10, as mentioned by Memo, we will have 1,000 Pokemon. Okay? 1,000. That's a lot of models to be made. And you might say like, oh, but this game did it or that game did it. No, they didn't. Sure, they may have future-proofed them. You know what I mean? You might, you know, a lot of people will be like, oh, they future-proofed Pokemon, etc., etc. That doesn't mean that, like, just because they have the existing 3D models, that's all there is to it. They still have to remake animations. Sure, some of the animations are not really that unique. I mean, Score Bunny, like, jumping is cute and all, but there still isn't animations for the Pokemon, like, you know, when doing, like, a double kick or whatever, actually doing animation. It's still just that, like, bop thing, you know what I mean? Like, oh, it just happened, right? There's no actual, like, animation for the attacks happening, which I still am disappointed in because Game Freak should, like, seriously just take some time, spend a few years to make it actually, like, amazing, proper Pokemon game, but they won't do that because people keep asking for new shit all the time, and Game Freak is making more money this way because new shit all the time keeps their franchise always in the loop and is always around, so people have more things to play from them, but that's just how it is. So, let's continue to the actual article. Now, we talked to Game Freak about the potential, etc., we just read that. So, the Pokemon Sword and Shield is in a big moment of transition for the long-running monster training franchise. For the first time ever, a mainline generation will be available on a dedicated console. That means all manners of things for the series, from how it handles random encounters, the decision to pare back on the number of Pokemon that can be transferred to a new Pokemon home app. To get an idea of what to expect from this generation, we sat down with the director Shigeru Ohmori and our producer Junichi Masuda to talk about the implementation of the new Dynamax forms, the potential of Sword and Shield's post-game, and the decision to stick exclusively with the Galar region Pokedex. One takeaway, Game Freak is keenly aware of the opportunities and challenges of moving to the Nintendo Switch. It is truly a new era for the series. And, here's basically their questions. To start off, bringing Pokemon to Nintendo Switch. What were some of the things you wanted to do with the extra power and the extra things you can do with something like the Nintendo Switch compared to the handheld? Also, I'm going to turn on the music again because otherwise you guys are probably just sitting in silence. There we go. Switch compared to the handheld. So Shigeru Ohmori, director, says, so Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee being the first games we developed for the Nintendo Switch, so now we have that confirmation. We did a lot of technical exploration and experimentation, and we learned a lot. We were able to use those two games as a kind of base for developing Sword and Shield, and really taking advantage of the hardware even more. One of the things we really wanted to challenge ourselves with this time is, since we have a bigger resolution and we can put more things on the screen, put them on the screen, big screen, we could finally really show the difference in size between Pokemon. That was one of the reasons we decided to try the Dynamax feature, which has giant Pokemon appearing, and the wild area, which is a big open area, which is something we wouldn't have been able to do with previous hardware. Talking about Dynamaxing, how do you feel that we changed the players? Okay, we can just skip this Dynamax part, and let's look right here. So look in the Gaul region. Why did you look into the UK specifically for inspiration, and why do you feel what do you feel are the defining characteristics of the UK that you want to bring across? Kind of skip that as well. If you guys want to read this yourself, you can do that. It's just that these things don't really, pertain to what we're talking about. I need to talk about max raids, what do you envision the end game and single player post game content is going to be like in terms of, and this is something we do want to look into, like post game and stuff. End game and single player post game content is going to be like in terms of what people can do after they beat the campaign. A lot of people wanted to play a little bit longer, so what do you plan to do? Are you looking at additional updates or anything like that? I can't really say too much today, of course, but I want to say that it's not just the story, and then you're done with the game. We've got a lot of content for players to enjoy after this, they finish the story. Also, for players who are really big fans of the battle system and the competitive scene, there are going to be a lot of them to engage. There's going to be a lot for them to engage with. So maybe a ranked system, like some sort of ranked actual battle system, that would be sick, because that seems like they're trying to change the meta, right? If they're removing so many Pokemon, and sure, maybe they're trying to do something different. On the decision to limit, here's where the big thing comes in, right? And we can read through the other things if we have more time. I just don't want to make this video like 15 minutes long. Here's the big thing, right? On the decision to limit Sword and Shield to the Galar Pokedex. Looking at some of the news that came out yesterday, there are some limitations to the Pokebank. Only the Galar region Pokedex is going to be accessible. Can you walk me through why that decision was made, and why you think it's important to have that limitation? So Gigi Masuda, the producer, responds here. So Masuda is responding saying there are a couple of different parts to the thinking behind it, but really the biggest reason for it is just the sheer number of Pokemon. We already have well over 800 Pokemon species, and there's going to be more added in these games. And now that they're on the Nintendo Switch, we're creating it with much bigger fidelity and higher quality animations, which, well, kind of true, sure, but I don't know if I would agree with that myself. Like, yeah, sure, the actual textures look better. Animations though don't really look too different. No, they just kind of look the same.
I actually pointed that out, and they do look exactly the same like they did in Ultra Sun and Moon. It's just the graphics from 3DS and Switch, they are different, of course, but it's exactly the same animation. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just the textures. It's just the textures that are changed. Which, sure, if you're changing 500 to 800 textures, that's a lot to change still. You know what I mean? And upgrade and improve that. Sure, that's a lot, but that's not animations really. I mean, sure, a few animations here and there when you're camping with the Pokemon and unique animations there and stuff, but it doesn't feel like the battle animations are much different, to be honest, and they're really not that unique or better actually. So that's a big boom boom right there. But even more than that, it's coming down to the battle system. We're making sure we keep everything balanced and give all the Pokemon that appear in these games a chance to shine. We knew at some point we weren't going to be able to indefinitely keep supporting all the Pokemon, and we just found that Sword and Shield will probably be the good point to go back and reevaluate what will be the best selection of Pokemon that appeal to the widest audience while keeping into consideration the balance of the battle system. It isn't going to be an all-new Pokemon in the... it isn't just going to be all-new Pokemon in the Galar Pokedex, region Pokedex. There's still going to be a lot of favorites that the fans will be able to bring over that they've adventured with previously. But yeah, it was pretty much just balancing and getting this optimal selection of Pokemon for the adventure we wanted to provide. So, here they talk about, can you tell me about the selection process? Like deciding which Pokemon you wanted to port forward, how much of that had to do with the fan favorites versus balancing out the types and abilities. So there are definitely a lot of factors. The primary factor was the setting of the game. We have the Galar region. We spent a lot of time discussing which Pokemon would make sense in that region. We kind of select from there, but we also selected types that make sure to the battle and balance, battles and balanced are really provided provide this exciting kind of battle experience. They see Sword and Shield being a kind of jumping off point for the future of the Pokemon series, because you're not only launching Sword and Shield, but also Pokemon Home, Pokemon Bank, and a lot of things coming up around it. Does it feel like a new era in the Pokemon series? I think it might be fair to say it's not a transition, but for example, at Game Freak, Ohmori-san is a director for these games, so we're passing on a lot of responsibility to the younger generation to kind of move the franchise forward. Also, being on the Nintendo Switch allows new playstyles, not just handheld, etc., just kind of the generic stuff. So here they talk about if it takes inspiration from Breath of the Wild. They talk about gym battles, and honestly, I can probably go through this article in a different video again. I just don't want this video to be any longer because it's already 30 minutes long. So I want to just like bring it up here. So there's your proof for anybody that didn't believe that, you know, this was kind of gonna be, you know, kind of a little bit of transition into a new era. Clearly, why is it that? Because, well, you heard what they said. You saw what Masuda said. They had to reevaluate what they would do because they're at 800 species of Pokemon. And honestly, I understand it. But at the same time, this is why you, and as many people mentioned, you future-proofed the X and Y models, okay? The models. Now, you have to understand there are three different, you know, categories here. There is models, which is the clay model, the actual shape of the Pokemon, right? There's the texture, which is the color and everything that's on it, right? And there's the animation, which is the movement, right? Those three are all a little bit different, right? Here's the thing. The models were all future-proofed, right? That's the thing that they made sure to do in X and Y. Every single Pokemon that existed in X and Y and prior to X and Y was future-proofed in X and Y to have models that would be able to be used for foreseeable future, right? That's what we have right there, okay? Textures though, have been remade every single generation almost. Every single generation that since X and Y, you know, with X and Y having a specific style, Sun and Moon having a different style of textures, and then Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee having a different style of texture, except that was a new generation. But like basically, they've changed the textures each time, right? And that's a lot of textures to change. Sure, 800 Pokemon textures to change, that's a lot, at least for, you know, Sun and Moon. But then in, you know, in Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, it's only 150, 151 or whatever, you know what I mean? So it wasn't a lot there. And now, you know what I mean, the final thing is animations. Now, animations, the only time they've had to do unique animations for each game is when they have those brand new features, like, for example, Dynamaxing now, or Mega Evolutions, or, you know, Z moves, you know what I mean? Because you got to make new animations that show, like, you know, the effects and stuff, how the Pokemon moves, or, you know, for example, when you're petting a Pokemon, like, you know, you know, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, you can pet, like, Pikachu and whatnot. Like, imagine that feature, you know, that feature exists already in X and Y, like, you know, Amine, something like that, Amy or whatever, Aime, I don't know. We can, like, I don't know what it's called, dude, but you can basically pet your Pokemon, like, ooh, scratch their heads and shit. You know, that already exists there, you know, and basically having to redo new, like, animations for all that stuff, each and every single game, I can understand fully why that would be a problem. We now have the new camping feature in, you know, the open wild area, and there you can, like, pet your Pokemon and stuff, and if they have to make an animation for every single Pokemon there, I get it, but also, would that be, like, what would you then prefer? Like, removing a feature in the game that, who knows, maybe it will be great being able to camp with your Pokemon and chill out in the middle of nowhere and just kind of, like, maybe we'll add to the atmosphere, but is it worth it? Is the open world and all these other things, is it worth it at the expense of the lack of all the Pokemon? You know what I mean? And eventually, you know, several generations from now, will it be even like without waiting for 4 years maybe for a brand new game, you know what I mean, will it be possible for them to even make, you know, a game with every single Pokemon in it? Because think about it, that's a lot of Pokemon. You know, eventually we're going to sit at 1,000 plus Pokemon, you know what I mean? That's a lot of Pokemon to go through. Like, literally, that's a lot of Pokemon to remember. Like, people get angry, like, nowadays if you don't know every single Pokemon's name. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you don't know every single Pokemon's name. Like, sure, you can recognize all of them that are real, but remembering every single one of their names is kind of hard, honestly, because there's a lot of them, and it's going to get even harder and harder and harder as time goes on. To remember each single one of them and, you know, having to include them. So, I think in conclusion, guys, we have a situation like this, okay? We're basically in a position where, right now, it feels like the future of Pokemon is in a bit of a disarray. Do we either wait for a long time for a brand new game? So we have two options, right? We either wait for a long time for a brand new game, or we get new games every single year, or every other year, but we lack all the Pokemon, right? It's simple as that. There's not much else to put to it. So, I don't know. Memo, you want to add anything in here at the end? Any, you know, final points?
Yeah, sure. The thing where you said, do you want to wait or do we not want to wait?
Yeah.
Personally, I know from experience, people are not going to. People want it all, but they can't wait. You can't see the cake and then eat a cake. You know, I don't know how you put it. But
no, I know
yeah,
what you mean. I know what you mean.
But I don't think that is personally going to happen because Game Freak wants to make the most people happy, and by that, and they want to be relevant all the time, so they have to release a game. That's the new model of 2019 and games. I'm sorry, guys. That's just the way it is.
Yeah,
We're going to get
unfortunately,
new
that
games
is how it
every
is.
year. Yeah, exactly. We're
Yeah.
going to get new games every year. We're going to get new games every year.
Yeah, not new generations, but new games. Like for example,
exactly.
next year Diamond and Pearl remakes, right? Or Let's Go Johto. The year after that,
Exactly.
either basically next year it's either Let's Go Johto or Diamond and Pearl, and then the year after that it's either one of those as well. It's like basically like every single year from now on we kind of have it all planned out, right? Next year it's that. The year after that it's that, and the year after that maybe it's nothing, or maybe it'll be like a a Sword and Shield kind of like a definitive version. I mean, like Pokemon instead of Sword and Shield, would be called like Pokemon Spear or Pokemon Bow or some shit, right? They could do another. They could do one of those.
We saw before.
Exactly, or they could do the next generation at that point, because that would be like what 2019 right now, and that would be like 2022, right? That would be enough time for them to make another generation, sure, or who knows? Because I mean, look at like Sword and Shield was in what 2016, and now we have 2019, the next thing. So if 2019 and then 3 years from now, 2022, that would be the perfect time for the next generation, and in between there would be 2 remakes literally. So I don't know, man. It seems to make sense in their plans. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be the end of the video though. If you did enjoy it, drop a like down below. Check out Mudkip Memo's channel, link in the description down below. Make sure to sub to him, guys. Getting closer to that 1K subs. Also make sure to sub to this channel, guys, because we're getting closer to that 100K. Really want to hit it at this point. It's been taking ages, but yeah, thank you so much for watching. Have yourselves a great day, and let us know in the comment section down below what you guys' like thoughts and opinions and all this. So yeah, see you all. Peace.